So tell us if this has ever happened to you in the comments. Have you ever been using your phone and realized that you're being billed for a bunch of calls you didn't make, or a lot of your data is being used, but you don't remember being up at 3 in the morning scrolling your phone? Well, that's because something old has become new again and is on the rise, specifically SIM swapping. Today, we're going to talk about how these thieves can take your data, specifically your SIM information that's specific to your cell phone, and start charging you for all of their use. My name's Frank Downs, and I'm here with Dr. Dustin Brewer, as always. And today we have Chris Adkins, who's agreed to return with us. If you haven't
Thanks
heard
for having me.
Chris's earlier episode, you can learn how the Navy can help you do cyber too. Welcome back to Legitimate Cybersecurity, Chris. We're really happy to have you here, and welcome everybody who's watching. So I want to kick things off with asking you about your experience with SIM swapping. I know that it's something that I've heard of a lot, but personally, I have never experienced it. And I don't know if that's just because of the line of work I'm specifically in, so I'm a bit more paranoid, but I want to know, is this really something that is attacking people I know, as it were? I've got a few people who have discussed it with me, but what's your experience been? And I want to start with you, Chris. Have you ever had an experience with SIM swapping, realizing someone else is using your phone or something similar to that?
I will answer that question, but first, I want to say congratulations to Frank and Dustin and Legitimate Cybersecurity for hitting 10,000 subscribers. Huge milestone. I don't know if you guys have talked
What?
about it.
Oh,
So,
thanks, buddy. I appreciate. Yeah, I
congratulations to you
didn't. I
guys.
hadn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's. I guess a lot of people want to hear what we have to say, and I feel like
Yeah.
Which
I
is
should.
shocking to me.
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry,
kidding.
guys.
I
I
talk
thought
to you
I'd
every
make
day,
enough.
though,
I thought I'd make enough uncomfortable jokes that would just make sure this would
right?
fail after a month or so. But hey, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can answer your question now, Frank, if you'd like.
Go for it.
Okay. That was rude. I apologize. I'm good at being rude sometimes.
Hey,
I, you know, so I,
it's an underappreciated skill, and I didn't even
right.
notice. So there you go.
uh, so I've never known anybody or had any experience with SIM swapping myself, right? Personally, I don't know. I think sometimes it might be just kind of luck of the draw, right? Like, because you think about the process of how that goes and having to interact with, somebody at AT&T or T-Mobile or right, and social engineer that actual swap. I think sometimes it's kind of luck of the draw, just like a lot of things. So I don't know. I think maybe we're just lucky. I don't think we're more or less susceptible to it than anybody else. So that's my 2 cents. I've never known anybody though, but I know it's really common, especially in South America. It's quite a bit of it down there. So, but I don't know.
Well,
What about
and
you
it's
guys?
interesting because your phone, if you think about it, is the master key to your life, as
Yeah,
it were, right? I mean, so many
everything.
people now are even eschewing computers for just they've got a phone and that's enough. Which personally, as someone who is probably addicted to multiple screens, that sounds like a nightmare. And I don't know, do you guys ever experience that situation where you're doing something intense on your phone and you're like, no, I
Can't
need
do it.
computer. I need to go and
Yeah.
I need a keyboard to be
I,
an adult about this.
I found that so it's interesting because my daughter is 14 now. She does everything on her phone. She has an iMac in her room, right? But she can do anything and everything on her phone. And I don't know how the heck she does it. See, now this is where I think we're different, Frank. Like we can't, like, we're not normal people when it
Because
comes
we're
to this kind of
old.
stuff. Yeah, partially, but I think it's about what we do, right? Like, so I think about myself personally when I research things on my phone, right? I go real deep, real quick, right? And you can only go so far on a screen this big. So yeah, that's how I think about it. My brother's the same way and he's 15 years younger than me, but he can do everything and anything on his phone. It blows me away.
What
Just
what
constant, everything.
what about you, Dustin? Have you ever had any SIM swapping problems, or have you had anyone in your family experience this?
No, I haven't, but it makes a lot of sense. Like as we move, this happens all the time. Like whenever we move from a physical, tangible capability with a technology into a more digital version of that. So I'm speaking
Hmm.
here on about eSIMs, right? It makes it, I don't want to say easier to steal, but it makes it easier to spoof, maybe easier to it makes it less face to face. So I don't have to go and mug somebody to steal their SIM card, right? I can do it all online. And so there's this whole field of study actually with cyber psychology, where they talk about, different methodologies that hackers use, but also like the mindset of a hacker and the psychology that goes behind it. And something that I kind of deemed as a cyber psychopathy, which is like basically you're not face to face with somebody, so it's a lot easier to rob that person or to steal money from them or to steal something from them. And because you don't have that human interaction, then you have less remorse. You kind of have a little bit of an easier time of of stealing from an unknown faceless stranger than you would if you were to actually steal their phone off of them, right? So I see that as like, that's probably a really good explanation for why, or at least part of the explanation for why this is on the rise, why it's happening again. SIM swapping, Frank, we used to do SIM swapping all the time.
Yeah, all the time,
Kind of
especially
part of
when
our
they were
job.
physical. Yep, it
Yeah.
was part of
I
our job.
actually, I almost took a picture for you guys. I had like all my phones that like, because I keep all of them throughout the year. So I used to teach a course on electronic surveillance reduction to various entities. But one of those things was, the ability of like basically creating a persona online, like a kind of mock persona, but also just, creating a phone that has attached social media accounts, attached phone numbers, attached credit cards, whether they were vanilla credit cards or not. But then also the ability to take a SIM out of one, switch it to another, and then kind of start that persona over again. So I almost took a picture of you for you guys, and I was like, I think I have a problem because I have like 40 cell phones over the years, and they range from like the original Motorola Razr all the way
You
up
still have
to
that Sony
the
one
Samsung
that
Flip.
you got, like, the first
Xperia.
I remember you had the first cell phone that was, like, made by Sony that had a 7-inch screen, or
Yeah,
was it
the
6? It
Xperia
was
Z.
6 or 7, yeah,
The
and
Xperia Z
and
it was 7 inches. It was huge and it was waterproof. That was one of the coolest things about it. So I
and it was
remember
even
like
bigger than that because it's still this was, like, 2012 because it still had bezels as well, like those
right.
bezels on the side, so you were, like, basically talking into a tablet.
It was it was huge, and I got a lot of comments on it. And the one guy I was in, I think it was in Virginia Beach, and like I was buying something at a convenience store, and the guy behind the counter was like either Russian or Ukrainian. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, I couldn't tell the dialect difference, but he was like, "You have my cell phone," and he like pulled out his, and I was like, "Oh my god, you're the only other person I met." He's like, "I got this in Europe," and I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense." It's like the only place that anybody would ever have that phone. But yeah, I used to love the big phones. Now I have the foldable phone. So to your point, Chris, on the like multitasking, if you have that kind of like if you have more real estate to work with, it does
Yeah.
get a little bit easier. But I'm just like you guys. Like I don't like working on my wife will work on her phone. She'll sit there and write emails and do work, and I'm just like I can't do that. Like if I'm doing something on a spreadsheet, or even if I'm writing an email, I hate writing an email
Yeah.
on cell phones.
I
And
have a quick
something I wanna bring up real quick before we get too far, because I realize while we all know what SIM cards are, we have not necessarily explained it for
good
everybody
point.
who's,
Let's
watching or
define some
listening.
things, right?
So SIM cards are subscriber identity modules, and these are small chips that identify and authenticate a user's device on a cellular network, and it enables your calls, your texts, and your data. You may have noticed over the last few years, especially if you're here in the United States, that these SIM cards have kind of disappeared in a lot of different ways, and we've gone to something that's called eSIM, and this is short for electronic SIM. These are the SIM cards that are basically they're replacing SIM cards, freeing up the phones creators and carriers are justifying it by saying, now we have more room in your phone to do things to make your phone even better. When in reality, it does kind of make it harder to sell a phone that you bought, right? Or paid off or anything like that. And it makes it a lot easier for them to track them. And what's interesting is while SIM cards and these SIM thefts were more prevalent when there was a more of a physical SIM card, it was a lot easier to clone and
Hmm.
so forth. It has now been something that is attacking a lot of eSIM individuals as well, individuals that have eSIMs on their cell phones. And it's interesting because it's doing it through a different type of attack. Previously, you could probably do, in fact, you could do a lot of SIM cloning just if you left your phone alone too long, right? Or if somebody took your phone when you weren't looking and they could clone the physical SIM card. Now, the attackers have started to use a different way. And this is by using information that they find through data breaches and identity theft of you specifically, and they'll take that information and pretend to be you when they're calling the carrier. They'll then have the carrier activate another phone with your information on it and it will go to you. So it's exploiting this kind of weak link in that the carriers, surprisingly now, are the weak links in this instance, right? Where they're calling the carriers, pretending it's an impressive social engineering feat, but
Hmm.
there's not much that when all your data is stolen, there's not much that the carriers can do to really ascertain if this is you or not when you're being attacked. So it's really kind of a difficult process. And it becomes more threatening for you as an individual because if you have a cloned phone out there of your phone, think of all the different ways you log into your other systems, right? Your multi-factor authentication capabilities. A lot of times that's sent via text. And if these texts are going to other people who have your text information, well, it can be a bit of a concern. Let's put it that way. But let's talk about different ways that you can kind of prevent it, because there are different things that you can do in order to ensure that you are a bit more secure. And I want to pick the brain from both of you guys first. What are things that people can do to ensure that, these universal keys to their lives are not being taken advantage of, that people aren't stealing these phones?
Dustin, did you go? Sorry, Frank. I went digging for a SIM card too. Did you find one? I couldn't find one.
I didn't find one, but I was pulling my phone apart and I'm like, this is like this is like the original.
Yeah, and that's where they
I
used
did
to
the
go.
same thing. That's where they used to go. That big old slot right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I say, this brought up a question in my head, Frank. Actually, because like with our credit reports and credit scores, right? You can lock those, right? Or you can do credit monitoring, right? But as far as I know, nothing exists for your cell phone, like in terms of like that account through T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, or whatever, right? So there's nothing there you can just go flip a switch. I wish there was. Somebody should probably go do that. But like in my mind, I'm a bit of a super nerd, right? So I tend to keep an eye on a lot of accounts that I have, right? I'm looking for activity. Like even when I'm going through my email, if I see AT&T is my carrier, right? So like if they were to access it through AT&T, I think I would find out through an email, which is not exactly the greatest way to do it, right? To be alerted to something like that. But I tend to keep an eye on that thing. Also, like, keeping a hold of your phone, like actually while you were doing all that, I went and looked on my iPhone.
All that
The
being
eSIM.
explaining.
Yeah. Well, I was because I was thinking maybe we should show what eSIM looks like, right?
Right.
But when I went and
I'm
looked,
not
I was
showing
like,
them mine.
yeah, there's a lot of information in here, right? That you don't want to. It's almost like you don't put a picture of a key on the internet. Same principle, right? Like don't put. I don't know why somebody would screenshot their eSIM settings, right? But like you got to
They
hold
would
that.
do it.
It's a
Yeah.
you're 100%. Yeah, true, right? But it's almost like a password, right? Like you got to keep that stuff close to the vest. So I don't. Is there anybody out there that does some sort of safeguarding for personal eSIMs? I've never heard of it. I don't know if you guys have or have seen it.
I think it's kind of on your carrier, right? Like that would be
Yeah,
something that they would be like, hey, anti-fraud
100%.
report, you just got something just happened, or did you switch your eSIM? And I have gotten those reports before because unfortunately I have had to change phones multiple times over the past month because I keep breaking them. But in doing that, I get an email every time my eSIM switches. I get an email. It's like, hey, if this is fraudulent, please contact our fraud department.
Mhm.
Like, let us know what's going on. So I think that's kind of on the carrier. And I know that there are safeguards on carriers to do so, but I don't know if there's necessarily like a service that does it outside of it. And honestly, should there
How
be?
would
It's
they?
kind of like your bank, right?
Yeah,
It's like if someone starts
they
taking money out
should
of
be
your bank in
protecting it.
Uganda, like they should probably alert you and say, "Hey, is this
Yeah,
you?" Same thing with your cell phone. If your cell phone starts
yeah.
making calls from,
Good point.
yeah,
I think it gets to a bigger
Europe.
problem, because we've talked about identity protection a lot on this show,
Mhm.
right? And I think this kind of is a great example of you can only do so much to protect your identity, right? You can freeze your credit, you can make hard passwords, you can make unique passwords, you can implement MFA. The individual, as the user of the phone, can have a perfect cybersecurity hygiene. That doesn't mean that the organizations that they're going to be working with or paying money to for a service are going to be quite as good. And I hate to get boring and talk about third-party risk, but I think this really gets into the third-party risk area. Not to anybody who works in third-party risk. You guys are super cool and we love you and you actually are very handsome. But when it gets to third-party risk, you can only do so much to guarantee the organization that you're working with is going to really take things seriously. And when we talk about security, there's a phone service out there. Have you guys seen this? It costs like
Mm-mm.
not, it's expensive. It costs like $90 a month, but their whole thing is it's the most secure phone service on earth. They don't keep user data that other organizations and companies
Okay.
use. I think it's called Slate or something. I'll look it up here shortly, and this is not an endorsement, by the way, either. But you can use services like that to try and keep as little information out there so that it's just not theftable, I guess, stealable in that way. But I don't think that there is a surefire silver bullet here. And as we become more digital just in life in general, it's just going to become more of a complex topic. I mean, look at this. We talked about AI and religion last year, right? If you think about taking a cell phone away from most people, they wouldn't be able to work, right? They wouldn't be able to go about their daily lives. And that if come back with me guys on this experience of the 90s, right? Where Dustin, I don't know about your background, Chris, but Dustin and I were raised evangelically, where back in the 90s it was all big about Left Behind and the Mark of the Beast and whatnot. Like put
Mhm.
someone with those goggles on right now, right? What are cell phones?
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not that. And it's like, oh, your key or connection to the devil. But my point there is that now that we've made these deals with the devil, I guess, there's no way to really extricate oneself or protect their information. And it's just one of those things that you're going to have to accept may happen to you as you move forward.
Super
Anyway, all
vigilant,
that
right?
to say is, how much money have you lost to sim theft or any other satanic activities, Chris? I'm kidding.
Not that I haven't been keeping track, so I don't know. I will
Too
say
many
though, like
times?
too many times, a lot, thousands. I have no clue. I will say so. I'll tell a story. I don't know that I've told you guys this yet. When this past summer, I was in North Carolina for a vacation, and my Gmail account got hacked. Yeah, I it was a bit of a weird moment, right? Because what they did is they went Gmail, then they went to my Coinbase account, which I
Dag.
don't do a lot. I don't do a lot in my Coinbase account. So at
Well,
first I
that's
was
my
like,
retirement account,
whatever.
so I'd be in trouble.
Yeah, so don't. But so like I actually ended up on the phone with somebody. I got good. I ended up on the phone with somebody who said they were from Google, sounded like they were Google. You know what I'm saying? They
Mhm.
sounded like they were from Google or Coinbase, excuse me. And he asked me, well, hey, it says that you have a full Bitcoin in your account. And I laughed. And that's exactly when I knew this is all a scam. I don't have a full Bitcoin in my Coinbase account. But to go back, the whole way they got in, right? Being super vigilant and all these things, 2FA. I had an old recovery question in there from long time ago. I had one recovery or password reset question in there that happened to be, as I thought about it more, public information. And that's what changed. That's how they were able to get into my account. Why there was one, that specific one, I don't know. I clearly deleted the other ones and got rid of them because you don't need them anymore with the way Gmail works. But like even being super vigilant, there's so much that's changed and so many things that have happened over the years in terms of how we access accounts, right? I guarantee there's old stuff hanging out there. And I see the look on both your guys' face going, uh-oh, do I have recovery questions in my Gmail account still? So it's a thing, right? So you got to be continuously super vigilant when it comes to access to certain things, right? I may have derailed us there, but I felt it was
No.
important.
No, it,
So I'm
it
sorry.
fits because I probably do have I don't delete email. It's something that drives a lot of people I know crazy. In fact, I'm
I don't
looking at
either.
my personal email right now, and my inbox has over 100, and this is the inbox, over 100,000 unread emails. The promotions alone are separated and are 171,000 unread. And then the updates are 136,000 unreads. Yeah, it's gnarly.
You should.
Wow. I didn't know Gmail changed that. So does that mean that I have 100,000 emails that are actually applicable to me in my inbox that I haven't read? I don't know. I've kind of
The
given
way it
up.
classifies. You do an experiment, Frank. You should report back to your viewers because I did this last week, and I'm curious to see what your experience is. I went and did the mark all is read thing within Gmail. You know, you click it, you
Oh,
click your
yeah.
thing, you go mark all is read. I want to know how long it takes them to mark all of those emails read for you for your 100,000. Because
Week.
I had
It's going
about
to take a while because I
maybe not.
guarantee there's some cold storage there.
Yeah, exactly. I had about 80,000 when I did it. And I think it took about 48 hours for all those to be marked.
Whoa.
I'd be curious to see. Yeah, because to your point, Frank, like cold storage, all these, like they're not holding all those emails right there in that one inbox, right? But I'm curious to see what you come back with. That's not cybersecurity related at all. Now I'm just curious
Well,
what
it's
it would
Could
interesting
be.
be.
because this type of incident is similar to if someone gets on your credit report and trying to extricate them from that, because that takes
Yeah,
days. And that
it's not
takes,
easy.
like, my dad's still on my credit report, and I've just kinda given up at this point, and I'm like, "They're not getting any trouble, old man, 'cause you're not gonna wreck this credit report.
Yeah,
I need this,"
yeah.
I'm very proud of my credit report. It's, I know I know people can struggle with it, but, like, once you get it to a certain level, you never want it to ever, ever, ever go down. But, okay, with all that, Dustin, who do you think is most at risk here for these types of attacks? Because my thought of this, and maybe it's just my bias, whenever I think of this, I go straight to the elderly, right? Because
Mhm.
everybody's going after grandma these days. And like, especially with have you guys seen that new crypto attack that they're doing on the
No,
old people?
Mm-mm.
They
no.
are
What is it?
literally calling them from their scam centers, right? That are all around the world, and they are convincing them to liquidate their entire retirement accounts and go to those gas station Bitcoin kiosks
Yeah,
and
I have
shove
Yeah.
seen that.
all their money in it. Like, and
Yep.
it's sad. It's
Yeah.
sad because there's gonna, and we think, oh, how could you fall for that? I guarantee you, when we're in our 80s, they're gonna have a new flim flam scam, and I'm gonna be broke because I'm going to
Yep.
have
Yep.
given someone my money.
The holograms
Just,
are going to get us.
yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's most susceptible? This is a tough one because sure, like we talk about the elderly because they get scammed a lot. They get scammed a lot on like landlines though. Like it's a technology, and I was thinking about this week too because I was like, man, like AI has, not to derail on AI, but AI has really like it has overtaken everything in about 3 years. Probably even less time
Yeah.
than that, right? And where we're constantly talking about it. My grandmother used to ride a horse to school. And so, like, she saw the automobile, right? And she probably saw some automobiles,
Wait, real
but it
quick.
took
What did she do with the horse when she got there, though?
they had stables at the
Yeah,
school. I asked
At
her
the
this.
school?
They had stable. You would tie your horse to the stable, and there would be like a stable guy there who would feed them hay and water during the day. Like that's how. Or I'm probably not a stable guy. There's probably like volunteer students who had to go do it. But like she
The
used to
bad
ride.
students.
She used to
What
ride
a
a horse
change.
to
And
school.
now we have police officers in our school all the time instead of
Yeah.
stablemen.
There you go. My how times have changed. I'm sure that's what she would
Yeah.
be concerned about. But so like she saw I'm sure there were automobiles driving around her on her horse on the way to school. So she saw people with automobiles, but it didn't. Then she had her grandchildren who like as soon as they turned 16, they were getting cars, right? And so
Yeah.
but that was the span of I don't know 60 years. So like we have this when technology comes out now, it's like boom, 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 and it changes so quickly. And so you have a group of people, the majority of people who don't understand how that technology really works on the back end, right? You even have some cybersecurity people who think that Wi-Fi is magic, right? Or who think that magic internet brick is magic internet brick. They don't even pay attention to those kinds of things.
I really
Frank,
do.
Chris, all three of us have been on calls with clients who have older people on staff who are like, wait a second, my phone goes through the internet. And then we have to kind of explain to them like voice over IP and like, yep, that's how this works nowadays. And actually, even landlines are kind of like most of them are not analog anymore. I think they're all digital
Yeah.
now. But like
Yeah.
explaining that to them and that like blows their mind to think about like, oh, this isn't analog anymore. It's not like a voice coming through a line anymore. It's internet packets that are being routed. And so to your point, Frank, like I think the majority of people are because most of us have cell phones, very few of us know how they work. And so to be able to, to Chris, to your point, I actually just got a call from a crypto provider that said, like, hey, someone tried to change your email address over. They were like, press. It was like an automated message. It was like press 1 to accept this, and I didn't do anything. I hung up. I went on that, that exchange, and I looked, and it was like no activity. And I was like, okay, that was a scam call, right? To your point, like those things happen to us all the time. Like, and I was kind of explaining this to my mom recently because she fell for an IT trap and she had to do remedial training
Yeah.
for phishing, right? And it's like,
Oh,
mom,
okay.
that's not what happened, trying to explain that to her and saying like, did you check the email sender? Did you check this? Did you check that? And she's like, no, I didn't check any of that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad you went through your remedial training. And in 6 months, when you fail it again, you'll have to go through it again. But that's good
Do it again.
because it's not. I was explaining to her that like cybersecurity experts fall for this stuff all the time. It's okay. Like we're human. We're going to make mistakes. And we're going to, click on a link that we're not supposed to click on. I think we've all clicked on links that we're not supposed to click on, and recently, right? And so, we have an issue with it. We have trouble with it. The general population is like they're susceptible. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. I follow that. So like obviously the elderly, that's always going to be a target, right? I increasingly become more and more concerned about teenage, right? And a lot of my life revolves around that because of my teenage daughter, right? But in that generation and a lot of outside of our generation, right? They've grown up with the phone and the internet, right? But phones have become something ubiquitous. The younger and younger kids are now, right? They get them earlier and earlier and earlier. And I'm concerned about her inability to distinguish between real and fake, right? Simply because she doesn't have the life experience that we do, right? That we've seen what fake looks like and scam look like, right? She's almost gotten burnt, not like giving away banking credentials and that kind of stuff. There's plenty of controls in that stuff, right? But in terms of just like online shopping, right? Like she's huge into makeup, right? And that is a target rich environment when you talk about makeup. And there's been times where it's like she's going to buy something for like $5 from some foreign country, and I'm like, I don't know if that's real, sweetie, right? Like, let's look at this, right? So that has become more and more of a concern for me, is that this newer generation, the younger technology is accessed, right? The inability to distinguish between those two things, real and fake, right, becomes
Right.
more and more
To
difficult,
Frank's,
especially with AI, making
yeah.
it more realistic. So yeah,
One of Frank's favorite things to say is that, where the millennials are stuck, like we have to help our parents set up their printers and our kids set up the printers. Like we're in this
Yeah.
weird gap where we had to, like, we were the ones setting up the printers, in the 90s. And so like,
We
we
hold our
remember,
great
still doing it.
sacrifice to
yeah,
all mankind.
Printer, still fighting with my damn printer. I hate printer. I've got one. I hate it. Like
Don't say it. Don't talk trash about
don't talk too
printers.
loud.
Mine's right here. It's listening, and I
Ugh.
guarantee you it'll still
I'm
just
I can
spite
hear
me.
you.
I'm just lucky I live like 2 minutes from a Staples, so that in 2 months when the ink dries up, I know where to go real quick and get it for that last minute homework project. You know what I mean? I got it.
Well, it's interesting because you got me on printers, Chris. Dang.
Sorry.
Well, okay, no. Now
Sorry,
I
we
want to
can move
do.
to something else.
What is the cost analysis benefit? Like, is it
No.
cheaper? No.
Throw it away.
Ideate with me on this. Is it cheaper? Because I have learned in many instances, it's cheaper to buy a whole ass new printer than to buy new ink, and the printer will
Yep.
come with ink. And I just think that's insane. But at what
Crazy.
point is it cheaper for time, struggle, effort, and even finances to own a printer, or just go to Staples or go to the FedEx place?
I tell you what.
5 times a year you might actually have to print there.
So I'll tell you what, like with us in print, now that we're talking about printers and that question, right? I find that the things I print are things that we generate, like me, my wife, or my daughter, more for my daughter's schoolwork than anything else. When it comes to things that are sent to us from a teacher or it's a project, we go have it printed. It's much more efficient. It costs $2, right, to have 10 color pages printed or whatever, right? So to your point, like I never thought about this, right? The cost benefit analysis is for me, like I'm not screwing with that printer that I have in my lab, in my office, right? I'm just gonna have Staples printed out for me, right? I think that's already happened, right? Especially when it comes to color. If it's black and white, sure, print it out. Color stuff, run to Staples, Office Depot, or whatever, and just have it printed. Makes life so much easier. Pick it up on the way back from school. You know what I mean? From picking up.
I would even say that
very specific.
For this example, since we're talking about SIM theft, right?
Yeah, how did we get to printers from
somebody? No. Think about it though. If someone's at your house threatening to steal your SIM, I wonder if they would accept the printer instead.
I would 100% make that trend any day of the week.
In the apocalypse world, what is the value in the barter system of a printer, do you think? Oh, whoa, what would get you the most money in apocalypse if zombies or whatever? Okay, say all of a sudden everything's decentralized. Say they destroy the internet, right? And our ability to like communicate, have a weird apocalypse because everyone's like, oh, zombies and all that. No, what if they just took out the satellites and stuff, and we had no connectivity? What for the barter system, electronic, do you think?
Radio. Ham radio.
That'd be the most valuable, wouldn't it?
That would be the most valuable. And mesh-tastic nowadays, right? But yeah, ham radio for communication-wise.
Anything with a lithium battery. So you've got the storage there, but then you also have the IED capability with the lithium. Like any kind of precious metal thing, I think would be big. People would have to learn how they work again, so that might be a little bit hard. But yeah, that would be my guess.
You make a good point
like
with
the
that
ham radio
IED,
thing.
because what was it? That was how they attacked Hezbollah back in last year.
Right. Yeah, the exploding
the
radios, right?
Yeah.
I think it was pagers, right?
Pagers, that's what it was. Yeah.
No, first pagers, then radios, both.
Oh, okay.
Which I gotta tell you, that talk about one of the most objectively well planned and executed intelligence attacks I've seen, where they're like, not only will we blow up your pagers, then when you go to your backup of your radios, we'll wait a few days and then blow those up too. Anyway,
the amount of planning that had to take to get, because like you're talking about infiltrating a supply chain to get that done and making sure the right device.
It was super awkward for the supply chain too, because they didn't like the people who made the radios had no idea, none whatsoever,
no clue.
And they're like,
no clue.
Hey guys, and they're like, you mean to tell us you didn't really know this?
Can I derail and ask a question?
Yeah, why not?
I saw because I saw a video the other day. It was somebody talking about Chinese electronics, right? And they showed this. You've probably seen it. This laptop that's the dual screen, right? It
I've
flips
viewed a
out. It's
Chinese
huge.
electronic before.
Yeah.
Continue.
So they were talking about, boy, feel free to cut this if you would need, Frank. They were talking about
I don't do that. That's
capitalism.
the AI's job.
Okay. They were talking about capitalism and the free market as it relates to electronics, right? And the discussion point was brought up. How do you feel about this? That there's all this technology in China that when, like, as a nerd, I see it and I go, I want that, but I can't
Oh, I am
have it
getting frustrated
because
with
it's
that.
made by like Huawei and what's the other ones? I can't remember the three that are on the list right now, but it's
Well,
made
soon
by
they're gonna
Huawei.
they're talking about TP-Link, where they're like
Yeah,
gonna get rid
exactly.
of
Like, so I'd be
TP-Link
curious, what is
routers.
your guys' thoughts on, like, how do you feel about it? Like, have we gone, like, because the original intention was we don't want potentially compromised hardware in networking equipment within the United States. That was the original part of this. ZTE, that's the other one. Have we gone too far? Have you think we're like, we come to the point where we're missing it now?
Dustin, you answer first because mine's gonna be way too long.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, and Frank and I come from certain spaces where I think I almost feel like we haven't gone too far enough, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, these places aren't put on these lists because they haven't been researched and found to have had, installed backdoors, something happening on the back end, some kind of nefarious activity happening. So, and that's just the ones that we've done research on, right? Now, this presents a problem because everything we're talking on right now, everything we're looking at right now, there are components that were made in China. There are.
Yeah,
And probably
everything.
the smarter components, right? So, like, we are talking about the capability of them to be able to backdoor anything that we're looking at right now, if they built that.
Do
So,
you
but look, it's
differentiate between? Oh, sorry. I
no, it's
apologize.
okay.
I kind of follow up before you keep going though. When you talk about this, do you differentiate between consumer electronics and, let's call it, enterprise grade electronics or equipment? Is there a differentiation there, or is it just like all lumped together for you?
I don't. I think there's, obviously there's going to be more. There's going to be a juicier target, right, on the enterprise side. For the consumer side, though, everybody's a consumer. Senators are consumers. The president is a consumer. All of
Sure
us are
is. You
consumers.
consuming
So if you can get the right, and we've seen this before, where if you can get the right,
The right
if you can
person.
have if you can have the right person call back, guess what? Now all of a sudden you've got, the senator for the state of Texas, who's now you've compromised their computer. So yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Frank, what do you?
okay. I both agree, but want to contextualize some of what you said there.
Mhm.
So a lot of the lack of access to Chinese technology seems to be motivated through various and sundry and confusing or poorly explained reasons. To Dustin's point,
Mm,
there is, in many instances, there are proven examples of exploitation specifically done through certain devices. I get that. We should not have those, right? We should address it and make sure it can't happen. However, there are other instances, and I'll use TP-Link as a really good example. All the evidence that's been put forward so far with the TP-Link routers is researchers or people with, I don't know what their motivations are, saying that they can be exploited. There's a difference between can be exploited and has been exploited, right? This is the example I'll use there is one of the proposals that were put forward regarding the Dominion voting machines. Is a lot of it was like, well, if you do it like funny connection because it involves some SIM card
yeah,
elements
you're
too.
right.
The whole thing with the voting machines was, well, they could have been potentially maybe exploited. There was never any proof that those voting
Mhm.
machines were exploited. So I want to differentiate there and say I am frustrated with people just saying, because if we're going to be real technical about it, if you spend long enough looking at certain devices, almost
You're gonna
anything's
find something.
exploitable, right? You're going to find something. So then it makes me question the motivations of the people that are pointing out the actual, it could be. Now, on the other aspect, sorry, I'm almost done. I told you it was long. The
Yeah,
other
you're
aspect
fine.
that
I'm sorry.
frustrates me is all the really awesome electric cars that are being made in China. China is leading right now in electric car development, electric car production, and electric car efficiency. And there are amazing vehicles that we have no access to because someone somewhere has decided they're too much of a threat to the economy and has slapped all these tariffs on them. And that's not free market capitalism. That's not letting the most creative, ingenious, savvy business people win. That's almost the opposite, if you could, want to look real cynical at things. So I'm a bit frustrated in that regard because, yes, should we be concerned about exploitation performed by nefarious actors who may live in certain countries? I'm concerned about them in every country, including ours. I think that not enough people talk about that hardware hack that happened to all those servers where it was the transistor,
Oh yeah.
that was like the size of a grain of rice. That was a physical backdoor into almost every single server that was here in the US, right? No one talks about it anymore. So yes, I'm concerned about it, but we shouldn't we're so intertwined in the global supply chain at this point. We're not going to build phones here. Anytime someone does or tries to, Google did a great example in 2013 of they bought Motorola and they built all the Motorola phones down in Texas. And know what? No one bought them. Why? Because they were
Nobody bought 'em.
expensive for a phone and they had worse specs than people expected because they weren't made in a place that could take advantage of labor and build capabilities, right? So anyway, that is my thought on Chinese electronics here in the United States.
The TP link thing, I'm derailing again. Question for you guys. TP link. I attribute a lot of the TP link talk to just kind of a shitty product, right? Like in terms of how it's built and maintained. You know what I mean? Like they refuse to push out firmware updates and stuff like that I'm talking largely about like home consumer routers and access points and stuff, right? Like that to me, that's more of a crappy company doing crappy things as opposed to malicious intent, right?
Or a company doing the most cost-effective thing within the legal requirements presented to them.
Exactly. So
Why try
so
harder
is
when
the
it's all legal so far?
right. So like is the right answer to say no, we can't have these? Or is the right answer to go do better and enforce it through some other mechanism? You know what I mean? Like
I would
that's my
I would like a situation where either the individual, the company, both could have the opportunity to improve the product purchased and sold. How does that usually happen? Through specific regulation and requirements that feel, in my opinion, people just aren't willing to support because they're quote unquote bad for business. But when you
bad
give
for
us the
business.
capability to free our own systems and secure them ourselves through something like DDWort or OpenWort or something like that, then we're questionably performing certain, depending on what device you use,
Voiding warranties and all that
infringement,
stuff. Yeah.
right? Which
Yep.
is garbage in my opinion. So yes, I think it should be incentivized for companies to perform better, but there should also be the opportunity for individuals and the allowance for individuals to improve their situation as well. Sorry, Dustin, what do you think?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's a shame that we have to have regulations in order to hold companies to a higher standard or to a standard at all. But we do. And so, that's a big thing is it's like, okay, maybe you didn't have malicious intent here, but you didn't necessarily have the consumer's safety in mind when you made these batteries that
Mm,
could explode in these phones, right?
yep.
Or when you created a firmware that has port 5900 open because you were lazy and you didn't want to shut it off before production or whatever it was. You forgot to do it in the firmware. And then you didn't want to do the update because that's too expensive too, apparently. So you need to have those kinds of consumer protections out there. And I mean, we do. But I just don't know of a better way to do it. And again, I'm not a business guy, so I'm sure a business guy
Neither am
or a
I.
regulator or a a governing body would have a better idea here on how to do it. I just you can do it.
Yeah. No, fair. All right. Back to eSIMs, Frank.
Yeah, eSIMs.
No,
Wait, what are we
no.
talking about?
Yeah, well, but it does intertwine. We were able to interconnect some of those. So we're running on time here. I want to ask you guys one more question each before we end. When it comes to the specific SIM card situation, it all comes down, in my opinion, to security of data, and data security is something that people don't like to talk about, and data loss prevention and so forth. I often find when I work with certain types of clients, it's the last thing they want to talk about, right? Because it's boring. is so
Yeah.
like I tell a lot of people, sometimes cyber is very boring, but it's also very important. Looking at what's in place now, which is more than, in your opinion, more secure? Would you say your social security number? And here are your options. What is more
Okay.
secure?
Okay.
Your social security number, nuclear blueprints. All right.
Oh,
And I'm not just limiting to, the explosive parts, but let's think about any kind of, related ICBM parts, or it doesn't even have to be intercontinental, any missile stuff, right? We'll say missile blueprints, your SIM, or I don't know, like a Waffle House menu. What's more? Yeah, tell me what's most secure
what's
there?
more
Oh, you
secure
know what?
between those four?
I'll even say, and I'll add one in there, the Coca-Cola formula.
Oh,
The Coca-Cola formula is the most
yeah,
secure.
I
100%.
know.
Oh,
Why is
Yeah,
the Coca-Cola formula more closely regarded than our social security numbers and our
because
key SIM information?
it's protected by a private company. That's why. That has patent law, IP law, like all the legal mechanisms you can think of.
Fun
I'll
fact, they've
tell you a
never
story.
patented the formula because they don't
Oh,
want to tell
really?
anyone.
they haven't. Yeah,
Correct?
they
Oh, that
haven't
makes
had to.
sense. That
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. I'll tell you a story, right? Like, because you mentioned the nuclear stuff. Have you guys ever heard of the Star Treaty? You familiar with that?
Yes.
It was a,
No. It's been
okay.
forever. Go ahead. Explain.
Yeah, so it's essentially a treaty between us and Russia that allows us to do monitoring of the other country's nuclear assets, right? On certain bases and certain things, right? And so you talk about nuclear missiles, and we'll go back to being on a submarine here, guys. I know you're excited about that. So the way every 2 years we would have Russian nuclear people, I don't know what their titles were, come over to the United States. We would have to cordon off pieces of the submarine on the top side where you flip the top open, right? You look down and there's the missiles, right? Every 2 years, they would come over and they would stand there for 2.5, 3 hours and stare at our nuclear weapons or the tubes. There were no nuclear weapons in there, but they would stare at the tubes and go, I wonder what's going on here, right? So, like, on your list there, Frank, like the
I don't
nuclear
think they're
stuff,
letting the
I think
Russians come
is
stare at Coke.
exactly, right? And I would almost put like some of this nuclear stuff on the same level as your social security number. That may be a little bit extreme, right? But like I don't think people realize how much of that stuff is out there, right? Like in truth, like nuclear technology, it's not that complicated. It's complicated, but you go
Well,
read a couple
Eisenhower did
Wikipedia
give away a lot
articles.
of it in the 50s when he
Yeah,
was
and
talking about making he gave away the whole nuclear
yeah,
secret.
go read
I
some
think
Wikipedia articles, and a smart person would be able to go, oh, that makes sense. Then they would do this, then they would do this, then they would do that, right?
I
So
think that
that,
somebody recently fooled an LLM into helping them build a nuclear uh,
yeah,
bomb or reactor.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think they were
It's
they put that information like they did prompt engineering. So meaning that that information is open source because if an LLM can get to it, then whoever can get to it.
or somebody from the NERC has uploaded documents into Chat GPT
There
accidentally.
you go. There was some
Oh
kind
Anyways,
of
my
data
gosh.
leakage. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
Well,
anyways, I
well,
just yeah.
on that note of nuclear attacks and the ability to, we are not endorsing any research. We're not endorsing any of that.
No.
But we want to thank Chris. Chris, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. And the good news is we've lucked into getting him for next week, too. So if you want to hear more, he's on his way. But again, until then, we still don't have a catchphrase. Chris, give us an idea for a catchphrase to close things out. We've asked. No one's really sent ones that have stuck.
Be safe. Don't do stupid things.
There we go. Until then.
Don't do anything we wouldn't do.
And if you do, don't name it after us.
Exactly.
Till
There
then.
you go. I think that's your catchphrase right there, Frank. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. And again, congratulations on the 10K. It's a huge accomplishment.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
We will see everyone next week.